Dan, first and foremost, so nice to meet you, and thank you for joining us on ILiveHereWestchester.
Absolutely. Jim, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's start at the beginning here. You went from an FDNY firefighter to a real estate broker to legislative candidate for the county.
Yes.
Those are three very different lives. What is the thread that runs through all of this for you?
That's a great question. I would say that it really takes me back to when I was a kid. I spent a lot of time, especially on weekends, with my dad. My parents were split growing up, but my dad was a very unique man and a very bold man in many ways. But he used to tell me, especially as I got older into my teenage years, about his history as a Army veteran. He served as an Army Green Beret, jumping out of planes and stuff. And at a young age, he really instilled in me and my brother patriotism and serving your neighbor. And as we got a little bit older, 7 or 8, we lived in the Bronx in the Throgs Neck section. He used to take us to the local firehouses, and we looked up to these guys. They were our heroes. He even had a friend who was a part of the Bronx Volunteer Fire Patrol. It was separate from the FDNY, but they'd go on all the fire calls and everything. And what it instilled in me was just a service to your fellow man. And I think that's the thread that runs through here, whether it be as a New York City fireman, physically putting my life on the line many times, going into burning buildings, doing CPR. It was an incredible ride. For 5 years, I did that in East Harlem, New York, and I had a blast. But ultimately, between that and now as a real estate broker, helping people transition through the largest sale or purchase they'll ever make in their life, it always brings me back to looking out for people and helping people, whether it be build their finances or physically helping them out. And now as a candidate, I'll have the opportunity to oversee legislation for the county. So for me, I would say the thread that runs through is just service to, my neighbors, my fellow man or woman, and the residents of our area.
I think the key word coming up in these elections is going to be centered around affordability. And affordability means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Sure.
But focusing on home ownership, right? So you work with families buying homes in Yonkers and throughout the county. But when you sit across from someone who wants to own a home here and you run the numbers with them, what does that conversation actually look like right now?
Wow. Yeah, that's my day-to-day as a full-time real estate broker. So, I mean, that conversation, it starts out a little bit grim. Most people feel that the prospect of owning a home is slowly slipping away. They can feel it because their income is not rising as quickly as the values of the homes. And there are many things, many factors to that rise, but that I won't probably get into here. But ultimately, it starts out very grim, and I have to talk through people and explain to them that, hey, look, when you rent a property, yes, it is a little bit cheaper than home ownership, but you're really not building any long-term wealth. Right? 10 years from now, 5 years from now, you'll still be making that monthly payment and you would have been no closer to, say, paying off a house. Whereas if you buy a house, there's eventually that light at the end of the tunnel. Eventually this house will be paid off. And as a result, it'll go up in value and they'll build generational wealth. So sitting at the table, it starts off a little grim. People feel like, wow, it feels so out of reach. And we have to explain to people all the different options, whether it be mortgage with 3% down, or if they're a veteran like my father, they can buy a home with 0% down. There's such a there's a lot of missing information that people don't know surrounding mortgages and just how affordable they can be. But ultimately, when they look on Zillow, Realtor, any of the websites, what they're seeing is houses 700, 800,000, and that number is just, it's very big. To someone making $60,000, $70,000 a year, the prospect of buying an $800,000, $900,000 home, which by the way is not a mansion in Yonkers, it's your typical home now in a decent area. It just feels overwhelming. And that's where we come in to talk them through it and to show them the light at the end of the tunnel. Or maybe they buy a multifamily where one income subsidizes it. And it's really rewarding to see people in the end, 3-4 years later, call me and say, wow, my house has gained $200,000 in value. I'm so grateful we did that. It felt overwhelming, but you know what? The prospect of building wealth has been incredible. So it's a tough conversation, but we always try and shed the light at the end of the tunnel and show the big picture at the end.
Across the county, it's documented that there's a shortfall of around 21,000 housing units. Sure. And half of all renters in the county are paying more than they can afford. Obviously, a substantial percentage of their take-home pay. When you're knocking on doors in District 16, how does that data show up in what people are actually telling you?
Yeah, so as I go door to door, there are probably two big things that come up. Affordability is number one, whether it be Con Edison. I met a lovely older couple, husband and wife, in a small older home, and they told me that their average monthly Con Edison for two people in the home is $1,400. So it's crushing these people. And in seeing how many housing units are needed, people feel very grim. Like I said earlier, they feel like something has to change. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to put the incentive on the developers or even small home builders, right? Like as a realtor, I see if I sell a piece of land, there are a lot of people discouraged in buying that because they know that the prospect from the day they buy it to the day a house is built on it is like 18 months. So I think if we really want to focus on the housing unit need, we need to really streamline this process. It should not take 18 months to build a home. When I travel, I have friends in Florida and even family in Florida. And when we go down there, it's interesting because you'll go down there in January to visit right after the holidays, and you see a whole area get cleared, maybe 10 acres. And then you come back down in June or July, and there's 15 houses on that property already in 6 months. And then up in New York, where we are, it takes 18 months to build, sort of those same houses. So I think we really need to put the incentive and help people to develop quickly in the area rather than 18 months. Like the incentive right now is not in building homes.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Like what is driving that difference? Is it regulation? Is it zoning laws? What is it? Just inspections? What's the driver?
It's a little bit of everything. So when I sell a property, the big thing that they want to know is, do we have approved plans? What that means is before you build a house, you have to get an architect or a design professional is what they call it. It's to draw up a whole rendering of a property. You then submit that to the city. The city usually takes 4 months to approve it. And that's saying that there's no changes or anything like that. Or, hey, you need to move this water pipe. They look through it in detail. And I think that is a good part. We do need these regulations. But we just need to figure out a way to streamline it, whether it be more employees or maybe the use of AI to kind of streamline these things. But 4 or 5 months just gets the things approved. Then you have to hire your GC. You have to start excavations. Then there's inspections. There's still a home that I'm thinking of as I drive to my office regularly. And as I come down the hill, I pass it. And to this day, it's still there. It has seen 2 winters already. That's how long it's been. And it's still not up for sale because they haven't got their CO yet. They haven't got final inspections. So you got to think, if it takes 2 years to build a home, who's going to be interested in doing that? Who's going to spend all that money for 2 years? You got to buy the property, $200,000-300,000. You got to spend all the money, another $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 to build it, and then you got to wait 2 years. How much is there in the end? You're going to make $100,000 for 2 years. It doesn't make sense to some of these people. So that's why I'm saying there's so many layers, whether it be planning, engineering, just getting the city inspectors out there, and there's a lot. There really is a lot. We could do a whole podcast on just building in New York, but my focus would be speedlining that. And another big focus would be, as I mentioned earlier, I don't mind. You can build all of the luxury towers you want in Yonkers. I got nothing against that. What I don't like to see, though, is that city or county money going towards that, because they're largely super expensive. In fact, the ones that I'm thinking of in downtown Yonkers, the studios go for $2,300. Now, for context, anywhere else in Yonkers, a studio will go for like $1,600. So these are 40% more in the luxury towers. And the 2 bedrooms, if you want it facing the water, are about $4,000. So these are not affordable properties. So I don't see any value in county or city funds going to them. In fact, I think county or city funds should be spent more wisely. And that's where, some of my transparency policies are, in my candidacy.
So let's talk about that, right? Because, we all turn on NBC, ABC, whatever, and we're now getting into the as I like to call it, the ridiculous attack ad season, where preposterous claims are always made of what someone can do, can't do, and what they're determined to do, and just leaning into a mainstream narrative. But as a county legislator, what do you actually will have the authority to do, when you win?
Absolutely. So there are I guess for context, for anyone who doesn't know, there are 17 legislators that make up Westchester County Board of Legislators. I'm running for one of the seats. It's District 16. Now, the two big things that I like to say that a county legislator can do, the biggest one is that they draw up the budget. You'll see that the county executive signs off on the budget, but much like Congress, they come up with the budget for the county. And now that's vital, especially for some of the things I'm running on, like flooding and housing grants. Like I want to redirect some of the money for EV stations and such to down payment assistance grants. And the second big thing that they do is Westchester County specific legislation. Like there are some legislation surrounding the real estate commissions and things like that that came out of New York. Westchester County has the ability to influence those two as well. So it's a legislative body, meaning they make laws, and they also create and enforce the budget for the county. So Peekskill gets this much money, and Yonkers Schools gets that much money, and so on and so forth. There are some things that they do not have say over, like New York State sends money to the county and says this is where it's going, and as a county legislator, you just have to allocate it to whatever the state says. But at least half the budget, which by the way, the budget's $2.5 billion, half that budget will be up to our 17 legislators to figure out where it goes. And that's some of the money that I want to bring home to Yonkers for the flooding issues that we're seeing throughout the county, throughout the city, and specifically on the Warburton area. We're seeing a lot of people, their backyards are washing away, and in fact, they're my neighbors. Many of my neighbors have had their backyards washed away, and it's getting very close to their house. So they're sitting here like, whoa, I'm only another hurricane away from maybe my house falling into the Hudson. And, we reach out and you really don't get much help. So it's one of those things. But those are the big two, budget and county-wide legislation.
So I want to talk about flooding. Obviously I'm on the other side of Westchester. Outside of Yonkers, the visions of Mamaroneck being underwater, are still burned in my head. Obviously, been watching that construction, and a lot of water mitigation has been going on, but yet, Yonkers across the board, still low-lying area, and drainage infrastructure that wasn't built for the intensity of storms that the region now sees regularly,
Sure.
And there were buildings with millions in dollars in damage from just one storm. So how long have the neighborhoods in your district been raising this as an issue, and what has been the response?
Yeah, so really the fork in the road was Hurricane Ida, which goes back, I believe, about 4 years, a little over 4 years now. And it's funny because I was walking my dog this morning and I ran into a guy who lives in a building exactly affected by what you're saying. He has a co-op building on Warburton Avenue. It's right on the water. And they used to have this big, beautiful parking lot, probably 40 or 50 cars there that can park there. And during Hurricane Ida, the amount of water that flowed down completely eroded it. Now half of that parking lot ended up in the water. On the tracks, down in the Hudson, it was really bad. The entire street was covered in mud. It was awful. But what we noticed, and there's news clips to show you this, if you look up Hurricane Ida, Warburton Avenue, Yonkers, you'll see all the politicians from the governor to county legislators and so on and so forth. I shouldn't say all because there are some great county legislators that are really helping out. But specifically our county legislator, everybody shows up and says, we're going to fix this, we're going to get onto it, and so on and so forth. Here we are 4 years later, and literally nothing has been done about it. And we've had meetings as homeowners with the MTA, with some senators here in New York State, and what we find is it's a promise. They're kicking the can down the road. Maybe in 2028, maybe in 2027. FEMA was supposed to send us money, but they didn't, and so on and so forth. And I say to myself, nothing's going to change here. Until somebody's house ends up in the water and it's huge on the news, nothing's going to change here. And, the county, their infrastructure is the sewers and drainage. That's their responsibility. So for me, I think we just have to make more noise. As a county legislator, if you cannot physically make the change by a vote or a stroke of a pen, then you should be on the phone advocating for your people. It's very simple.
So what's the bottleneck? Why kick the can? It seems like a dumb thing to do.
Yeah, I think those in power right now, specifically in our district, are just, more focused on things that they can put their name on and photo shoots and things like that, rather than picking up and doing the hard work. I'll give you a quick story. There was a fire in 50 Riverdale Avenue, downtown Yonkers, which is the district I'm running for, District 16. Now, I went there, I did a video, and I got a call from one of the people who live there. And he said, look, we're really struggling. It's been 2-3 weeks since the fire. We have no place to go. We're homeless. How can you help? Well, within a few minutes, I reached out to a county legislator outside of our district, but a really well-known one, and I'll give him a shout out here. His name was Jimmy Nolan, and he was able to, in a very short time, I think in about an hour, he called the right people in charge and was able to get this guy a housing voucher. And within about a week, he was able to find housing. He's actually still looking for housing. My real estate brokerage is helping him out to get secured. But I'm not elected. I'm currently running. I'm a candidate. And it took me one phone call to the right people, and then those people made the moves. Now, he's been calling our county legislator for weeks and hasn't gotten anything. In fact, when he did speak to our county legislator, she said, I didn't even know that there was a fire there. So I think that's the thing. There's a breakdown between what's actually happening and our elected officials, or some of our elected officials, and their duty to step up and help. And for me, sometimes it's just a phone call, like, what Jimmy did. He made a phone call, and like that, now the guy's like, you guys are great. You're not even elected, and he's not even my legislator, but you guys got the problem solved. And I said, you know what, when you care, it doesn't matter if you're in my district or not. You're a person, you're in my city, and you need help. Let me make a couple calls. And literally in an hour and a couple phone calls, he was taken care of, whereas it took him weeks to come across me or to come across Jimmy. And now he's working on housing, and it was quick. So I think it's just being willing to step up, and the bottleneck is sometimes the elected officials just being willing to do the hard work, the grunt work.
Dan, very hard-hitting question right now. What's your dog's name and what breed?
So I have 2 dogs. One of them is Roxy. She's a pit bull terrier. She was actually a rescue. We rescued her from the Yonkers animal shelter, and she is such a lovely dog. She sits up in the window. I'm doing this from my home office. So she sits up on the window on the second floor and just looks out all day, and very cheerful, loves people. My second dog is 6 years old. He's a Vizsla, and his name is Koopa. We named him from the Super Mario, King Koopa in Super Mario. So Koopa and Roxy, those are my 2 dogs. I love them.
All right. Well, good job on answering that question and not avoiding it.
That was
Appreciate
a tough one.
It. Yes,
it was a tough one.
I like cats. It's just not dogs. Yeah. You're a politician, man. I'm gonna have to press you on that.
I'm an honest politician, though. I love dogs. I'm a dog guy. Not the biggest fan of cats. I got nothing against them, but I'm just more of a dog guy.
Let's see. I'm with you. I got 2. County government spending, obviously is part of your platform. And,
sure.
Westchester has passed 5 consecutive budgets without raising the property tax, which, good thing.
Sure.
But yet the county is facing $24 million budget gap driven largely by declining sales tax and, apparently, President Trump. That's the narrative that we keep hearing.
Sure.
What specifically you're calling out to say when you say accountability, and what does that look like in practice, from your future seat?
So this came up largely because when I hit the doors and I talked to people, one thing that they continue to say is that, hey, my city taxes and my property taxes continue to go up. And maybe it wasn't coming on a county level in the last couple of years, but they just voted to raise it 3.5% for budget shortfalls. And, I'm a business guy. I own a business. I've owned a business here in Yonkers since 2017. And I realized that just because my expenditures increase, it doesn't necessarily mean that my product has to go up. Sometimes you have to look inward and say, how am I spending my money? Right? Is my rent too high? Can we renegotiate certain things? The answer isn't always that the people have to pay more. And sometimes I feel like that's where the breakdown happens. So I would go door to door and I'd knock on doors and people would say, there's an affordability crisis and so on and so forth. And when I look through the county budget, I don't see the budget going towards these things. Instead, one of my big things is I saw $50 million, or 45 to be exact, going towards EV charging stations. Now I said, surely if we're spending $45 million on this, there has to be a big need, right? Well, when I looked up how many people in Westchester County, on average, how many registered electric vehicles there are, roughly the number I got was between 6 and 9%, which means roughly 90%, 9 out of every 10 people do not drive an electric car. So if the county government is going to spend $50 or $45 million on charging stations, it feels like there's a disconnect. Because out of all the doors I knocked on, which is closing in on 6,000 now, I've never had a single person tell me, hey, you know what we really need? We need some more EV charging stations. No, they say we need more help for South Broadway. Anytime I go downtown, there's a big homeless population. Like we should get that under control. We should rehabilitate these people. They tell me that flooding is a big issue, especially on the west side of Yonkers, in the Warburton area. And they tell me affordability. We don't have enough housing. So I see those three, and I'm like, how are we addressing them on a county level? Fact is, we're not. So at the end of the year, they spend all this money on what I call party politics, right? One party wants to be the green energy policy and so forth. That's great. We can certainly spend money on green energy, but not at the expenses of schools, police, fire. The most recent budget cut all departments by 8%, and they voted to increase our taxes, 3 and some change, 3.5, I believe. So that means we're going to give you less and we're going to charge you more to do it. I said, okay, then we must be really short on money. No, $50 million on charging stations, more money here, more money here. So I just say, when I think of transparency, I want to say, what is it that the people are saying they need? Let's give them that. They're not saying we need more charging stations. Not a single person in almost 6,000 doors has told me, I drive a Tesla and it's just so hard to charge. No, Tesla's built almost 100,000 or over 100,000 chargers as a private company. You know what I mean? Like, let them do it. If we have a surplus of money and we're doing well financially, sure, build them all you want. Put solar on the roof. Do whatever you want. I'm not against green energy, but not at the expenses of police, fire, sanitation. And right now they cut them by 8%. So those are the reason we pay taxes. Those aren't the bonus. We pay taxes for schools, for police, for fire. So for me, it's just more common sense budgeting around the budget.
I saw that line item in the budget, and I was questioning that as well. Right, most people I know who have Teslas, I do not. When they get a Tesla, they get a charging station in their garage or whatnot. So there's an immediate way. So what is the rationale? Is the argument we need to attract more people to the county, and as we're putting up all these multi-use facilities or multi-apartment facilities, to get people to come here, and what's driving that? Because I think the county reopened its first county-owned mental health facility for the first time after privatizing it almost 15 years ago. So we're not giving to mental health, only subsidizing it through private ownership, but now we need all these charging stations. I don't understand what's driving that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think a lot of it, like I said, comes down to party politic. I think the party in charge right now is very big on that, and I think it resonates with the base when they say we're the green energy party. I think it's a federal sort of headline to say, look at all the EV charging stations we're building. We're the green energy. That's, like I said, that's excellent, but not at the expenses of other things like schools and fire. So for me, I think it comes down to party politics, because when I talk to people, and for context, the 6,000 doors, those aren't just my political party. Those are every door. I pick a street and I go door by door, every door, and I ask what are some of the things. And what we spend money on the county is not what resonates with the people. So the only thing I could see it is party politic, or maybe they're just being told that from some of the higher ups from the state level down, because I know the state was very big on green energy. In fact, with the recent shortfall, they were expecting a shortfall in the budget, and it took forever to get the budget out. They actually pushed back a lot of the mandates another 5 years, because they had mandates that would require any city vehicle that goes out of service, if it's a gas vehicle, it must be replaced with an electric vehicle. That included buses and garbage trucks. And like I said, in certain areas, these will work. No problem. Yonkers is a very hilly area. We have one electric garbage truck that was hailed as an amazing thing, even though it costs double than the gas one. And it doesn't even get used because it runs out of energy so quickly going up these hills that it's just inefficient. You'll get an hour or two out of it before you have to go and charge it again. So I think sometimes their heart is in the right place, but it's just misguided. As government, where we should be listening to the people and doing what the people want. It's their money at the end of the day. So I think that's where the disconnect comes, whether it be party politics or, just doing things to say, hey, look what we did. Instead, I think we should ask the people, what is it that you want? One of my things is, once elected, I'm going to have 2 town halls a year where I come back to the district, because I say come back because it's in White Plains where I'd be doing all the work in the office and so on the Board of Legislators. But I think it's important to come back at least twice a year, have a complete open forum where you invite everyone from the district and say, hey, what are the questions you need? Here I am. Let's address everything. And I think that's what's missing today, the connection between politics and the common person, the people that you represent.
With all the doors you've knocked on, two questions. Number one, how many more do you have to go? And number two, any surprising themes that have emerged that you did not expect?
That's a good question. So each legislator covers about 53,000 people, which means there's a total of 53,000 people, maybe not necessarily 53,000 doors, right? There could be multiple people. But I would say there's roughly about 30,000 doors that I have to get to, and I've hit about 6,000. And it's been largely me. I've had some help early on, and I have a gentleman from my church that accompanies me, and we go out regularly. But a common theme, it really hasn't surprised me much just because I've been doing this since February. But the common theme is that people are really being forced to sell against their will because of how expensive things got. Certain houses, depending on how they figure it out here in the city, you could be paying $17,000, $18,000 a year in taxes. And then when you combine that with a Con Edison bill that hits $1,300, $1,400, $1,500, you're talking $20,000, $22,000 a year between taxes and your utility bill. That's before you do anything. That's before you buy food, before you put gas in the car, which has gotten, extreme. So there are a lot of factors that are leading to people having to sell. I'll knock on a door and they say, I may not be here in November because I have to move to a southern state, Texas, North Carolina, where it's more affordable. So I would say that's probably the surprising thing, seeing people being forced out, especially retirees. Westchester County is not the most friendly to fixed income retirees. We're probably one of the most heavily taxed people in the world at this point, but certainly in the country. We're up there. So that's probably the most surprising thing, seeing people who have lived here, built families here, maybe are empty nesters now, being forced to leave.
How crowded is your race at this point?
Well, at this point, it's me versus the incumbent. So it's just the two of us. We don't have a primary. So it's a haul right now till November. But I would say it's not very crowded at all. It's a complete winnable race, especially the more I talk to people at the doors, the more I see that a lot of people are frustrated. And I tell people, if you're frustrated with the way things are going, the one thing you cannot do, if you are expecting change, is to elect the same people. It's just common sense, right? If someone continues to do something and you're unhappy with it, the only way to fix it, especially in our style of government, is to vote in someone different. Vote in a change. And I think that's where I come in. I'm that change agent where I'm not doing this for self-gain. I'm not doing this for self-promotion. I'm doing this because I generally want to help people. And as your first question showed, that's sort of the thread that I've always had. And it's been instilled in me from my father. We're from a family of union workers. My uncle drove a bus. My other uncle's a union painter. So we just know what it takes to serve other people. And that's what I'm looking to do with this candidacy.
Unlike the dog question, I'm going to ask you a very hard question.
Okay.
Your opponent is going to attack you. What are they going to say about you, and what is your response?
That's a good question. I've only met my opponent once, and it was before, it was probably just as I entered the race, so I don't think she knew that I was in the race. It was very cordial. I just said hello. I don't know her personally. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm running a very clean race. Because I don't know her, because I don't know her character, I could only judge based on what she has done as a legislator and even early before that as a city council. So I would imagine that they would probably or she would probably try and connect me somehow to federal politics, because that's what a lot of local politics try and do. Well, he's Republican or he's conservative, so he must be a Trump guy or a MAGA guy or this or that. So I could imagine that would probably be coming down the pike. And to that, I would just pretty much say, well, where's your proof? If you're going to say something like that, surely you should have some proof, right? Like you should be able to say, here's why I think that. Now, on the contrary, I simply say this, and I'm like, I'm in this race because I saw a need. I saw a breakdown of what the people want versus what the people are getting from our legislator. I saw a breakdown from when flooding happens and people promising things to what really happens, especially my neighbors here to the left and to the right. So for me, I just look at this as this is not a referendum on me. This is a referendum on my opponent's history and her legislative actions and her unwillingness to show up I think, when it needs to be. So for me, it's not personal. It's literally just, I believe that I'll do a much better job. And I think I'm sort of showing that already with the one instance I told you of the fire victim downtown. One call to the right person, an hour later, he got what he needed after weeks of waiting.
Let's fast forward to November. Someone goes in the booth, they're standing there, the ballot's in front of them. What is the one thing that you want that person to think about before they take that little pencil and scribble in the oval?
Sure. That's a great question. I've thought about this a lot as someone sits there deciding who's going to get their vote, who they're going to vote for. What is it that I'd want them to know? And the main thing is I'd want them to know that you have two choices in this election. You have a choice of somebody who has been a career politician. Their first job was working for the mayor. Second job was city council. And from there worked their way up to county legislator, largely without much opposition. And I would say to think about your life right now. If you think that things are going well, if you think the taxes you're paying are the taxes you should be paying, and if you like the forecast that you're seeing in Yonkers, then continue to vote the way that you voted. Continue to vote for the incumbent and forget I even exist. But if you're really looking for a change, if you're looking for somebody who's coming in looking to make a difference, who has a track record of service in his family. His father was in the Army. He served in the FDNY. He serves as a real estate broker now, helping the people of this county. And if you want someone with a smart business sense who has a track record of being able to build things and being wise with their funds, then I would say that I'm your guy. And for me, I don't put party above people. And I've said that from the get-go. I've said that to the party that I'm running with. I've said that to the opposition party. And my big thing is I genuinely want to help people. And I show up already. I show up to every event that I possibly could. And I think ultimately this comes down to who is the most fit for office, right? Is it the incumbent who has done this for a while and things really haven't changed and a lot of people door to door are unhappy? Or is it the newcomer, the businessman, the guy who has service in his blood? And for me, I think that's where it comes down to. I think it comes down to Yonkers needs a change. Voting the same people in is not going to get you a change. Voting someone different, fresh face in, is going to get you the change you want. So I hope that resonates with people, and I hope they see that it's a genuine need.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you, for getting to know you a little bit, for our audience.
Absolutely.
Most people running, all we know is when we walk into the booth. So thank you for taking this time, sharing a little bit about, why you're running and your passion, for District 16. And thank you so much.
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you so much. And to all the people listening and everybody in Westchester, vote Dan D'Amico, Yonkers, Westchester County Legislator, District 16.